Evening. I call to order this meeting of the Concord Planning Board on Tuesday, February 6, 2024 at 7 p.m. The Planning Board is convening this meeting by video conference using the Zoom application. This meeting will be recorded for future on-demand viewing. I'd like to welcome everyone attending this meeting and take attendance of members and staff. Let's see. Mark Giddings.
Here.
Sue Felshen.
Here.
Andrew Boardman.
Here.
Is Rob Almeida here? Or Abby Flanagan?
No.
Okay, but we do
Not
have
yet.
quorum, so let's move forward. I'll briefly, and also Elizabeth Hughes, our town planner, is here. I'll briefly review our meeting procedures. Each vote will be conducted by roll call. There will be public participation during certain portions of the meeting. Those participating remotely wishing to make a statement or ask a question during the public participation period should use the Zoom raised hand function or *9 on a phone and wait to be recognized. Once recognized, you may unmute yourself in Zoom or use a *6 from a phone and then speak. When you speak, please address the chair, identify yourself by name, address, and any relevant affiliations, and speak clearly for the meeting record. Comment during public participation are limited to 3 minutes or less, except for extenuating circumstances, such as for those with disabilities, and are requested to be respectful. Answers to questions, unless very brief and fact-based, will be deferred for follow-up at future meetings. The board welcomes written comments at any time instead of or in addition to those made during public participation. We'll now go to the first item on the agenda. That would be...
Linda, I'll note that Abby is here.
Oh, hi, Abby. Thank you. Thank
Hi.
you very much. Okay. This will be a definitive subdivision public hearing. We will review the definitive subdivision plan application of EMS development for improvement of a new roadway and for the creation of 4 new building lots at 80X and 1053 Main Street, parcels 3730 and 3734. I believe that the applicant plans to provide an update on their plans, especially given that the town department input has been coming in, and especially given that they did not receive approval from Public Works for the extension of the sewer main to serve 3 of their new dwellings. So I don't see on my, but I think Mr. Seppi is here.
Yes, Matt Seppi is
Can you
here.
hear me
So
okay?
Matt, would you like to begin or introduce your group?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Good evening. My name's Matt Seppi from EMS Development, and I'm here with Nathaniel Cataldo from Stamsky and McNary.
Hey, everyone.
We would like to provide a brief update to the board on the progress of our plans from the last meeting that we participated in.
Thank you.
So, thanks to Elizabeth and Alan, we have spent some last few months working with different town departments and staff members, primarily working through infrastructure related questions for the site and considering different options on how we might be able to best improve the design from what we had previously submitted. Before I get into the water and sewer, I just wanted to touch base quickly on the road names. I think at our last meeting, I had discussed I had worked with the Mandrioli family, who currently owns the property, and a longstanding family in Concord, to come up with a few names for the roads. The family felt that maybe if we had something that referenced the Boston Harness Company, that would be appropriate, since the harness company was in the area and there was housing for their workers in that area. So we got a few names together, and we did work with Ann Clifford in the planning department and the West Concord Advisory Committee to finalize on some name options. On the plans that we submitted, we had the main roadway coming in as Harness Hill and the secondary road as Saddle Lane. Since we submitted the plans, we did receive some feedback from Ann as well as from the emergency service departments, primarily the fire department, and suggested we maybe modify it to Harness Road and Saddle Lane. So we'll be making those adjustments accordingly.
Just to follow up on that, Matt, I don't mean to interrupt. Have you
Sure.
spoken with the Historical Commission with regard to those names?
We did, yes.
Great. Thank you.
So the next item I wanted to provide an update on is just the water main service to the site. So I did have an opportunity to get with the water and sewer department staff members, and we conducted a site meeting with the plans and reviewed the site and the different options that we have been considering for the water main service. Upon conclusion of that meeting, it was determined that the best and most appropriate way the town would like, that the town department would like us to install the water service would be to connect it, both the main at the water main coming off Main Street all the way over to Old Bridge Road and connected in that fashion. So it would be a loop system, which is what they would prefer in their design criteria. And we'll be able to get the individual lots all tied into that loop system now with the new design and the plans we submitted. There could be potential, depending on what happens with the Main Street and the Old Bridge intersection project, if that ever happens, that there could be a benefit of having the main set up that way, because there would be some isolation valves on Old Bridge Road in Maine. So if needed, they could divert the water accordingly, depending on what work might take place, if any, at the infrastructure, the intersection reconstruction. So that change has been made where we now have the water main connecting from Main Street all the way to Old Bridge Road, and all the lots will be connecting onto that loop system. The next item that we spent some time on was evaluating the sewer system and connection situation. Just to refresh everybody's memory, currently, we were allowed one sewer connection for the existing parcel that is at 1053 Main Street. And then we were allowed one connection for the vacant parcel, which is 80X Main Street. So we were short 3 connections based off the current rules and regulations. So what we did is I worked with Stamsky McNary to put together a plan that would show if sewer connections could be granted for all the different lots, how that might be able to improve the site and its layout and other adjustments that we'd be able to make. At that point, Alan was able to secure a spot for us at the Public Works Commission, and we did present that scenario and plan to the Public Works Commission and requested 3 additional sewer connections for the project. Upon lengthy review at the meeting, it was determined that the additional capacity was just too tight to grant the 3 connections for us. So the additional sewer connections were not granted at that meeting. I did feel like I put them in a little bit of a challenging position, because we do have lot sizes that adequately can handle individual septic systems, and we do have the soil that can handle it, and the Board of Health has reviewed it, and per Mass Law 8141U, the Board of Health Commission's already indicated that the systems could be put in. But I did feel it was going to be an improvement to the design, and it was worth the time and effort to try to see if there was any potential we could get those additional connections granted. And unfortunately, due to capacity constraints, we weren't able to do that. And that's the gist of what we've been working on for the last couple of months. And I'd like to turn it over to the board and Elizabeth for any questions.
Thank you. So let me poll the board, or Elizabeth, if you'd like to begin the discussion.
Sure, I just wanted to give the board an update. Just this afternoon, I did receive a comment letter from engineering. Quickly reviewed it. It seems like all issues and concerns have been addressed. There's some minor things, and I just forwarded that to Matt, Seppi and Paul. I don't have Nathaniel's email address, but I sent it to Paul Kushner, the engineer on the project. And I also believe I should be getting a comment letter tomorrow from the fire department, which does state what Mr. Seppi said about the road names, and they did not have any additional issues and concerns. They have recommended 3 standard conditions that I'm aware of. And I believe I also this afternoon, although I haven't read it, got a comment letter from CMLP. And they do not have any identify any significant issues or concerns, and have recommended conditions. Water and Sewer did provide a comment letter yesterday that I forwarded to Mr. Seppi and his engineer, and there were no significant issues identified by them either. So I think everything else has other town departments other than Natural Resources has the Natural Resources Director has provided comments to this point now.
Okay. So again, opening this up to board members, are there any questions that people would like? I know I have a few, but I think they've probably been covered, but maybe I don't have the notes or the most up-to-date informations. But if other board members have some questions, that would be useful to hear. Andrew.
Yeah, my only question had to do, and I tried looking at the plans, but I'm not an expert in reading engineering plans, regarding the potential for a sidewalk down from Old Bridge to, or whatever the through cut was, and where that all landed. I know there was some discussion, but I do not recall, and I could not find it in the actual updated document.
So with the connection of the water main going from Main Street out to Old Bridge, it has been a requirement from the water department that we provide a 20-foot wide easement there for where the water main goes. So we would have an opening there. We had talked at one point about maybe having like a gravel pathway or something that could be a walkway from Old Bridge to be able to walk down to that road, the new road construction, or over to Main Street. We currently are not proposing any sidewalks on the project, but with the water main going out to Old Bridge Road now and the opening of the easement, I think that could provide an opportunity for the stone walkway or whatever mechanism we choose to take place.
So Matt, could you perhaps show us that feature on your screen, if you can screen share with us exactly what that location would be? Because I also had some questions about exactly how that would work.
If possible, Nathaniel.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you want me to
call
yep.
that up, please?
Thank you.
All right, so this is the site development plan. So you're talking about between Old Bridge Road and Harness Hill, right? So in this area, kind of.
Correct.
So you're describing so he's describing basically what's the kind of lighter dash line right here, which is the 20-foot wide cleared path that has to be maintained as a cleared path for maintenance of the water main. So that would provide basically the opening you're talking about from the subdivision to Old Bridge Road.
Linda, if I can jump in, I think the last time, Matt, you were before the board, there was the conversation actually about having a path go from Old Bridge all the way up to Main Street on one side of, I guess that would be the north side of Harness. What are we calling it? Harness Road?
Harness Hill Road.
It's going to be Harness Road, yes.
Harness
Per
Road.
suggestions from the fire department. Yeah.
So is that something that, um,
I
either,
think that's
the-
something, I think there's the potential that there will be pedestrian and perhaps bicyclists using that way as a cut through. Certainly we don't want any automobiles, and I think that's not going to take place, but I think it would be appropriate to consider pedestrians certainly, and perhaps additionally bicycles. And so, yeah, Elizabeth, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know about other board members or would like to weigh in on that.
Well, it does seem like a good idea as part of the town's plan for greater non-motor vehicle connectivity, if it is a possibility.
Well, I'm certainly open to exploring an option for that. I think it's a good idea as well. We find a way to, and I can work with the group to come up with an acceptable presentation of what might be a good pathway that would be able to handle both walking and bike traffic there.
And since there's the short unpaved section where there would be that is to say where the road does not go through, I could see it going either way there. A paved path would be better for connectivity, but if it was merely gravel for that very short section, most people would be able to walk a bike just for that short section if they couldn't bicycle over it. Although it would not be very good for handicapped access.
Another question I had, particularly in that area, was the quantity of trees that will be lost, and then where you would provide some mitigation and or street trees. I know you had some limitations there, but I don't really know if we ever got to any sort of more quantitative or any drawings that would show more landscape as you planned it.
We don't have any additional landscaping plans at this time. We did try to introduce, if you can see, it might be challenging to see them on the plans, but we did try to introduce two 45-degree bends in the water main to move it to its one side of the paper road that exists, to try to avoid some of the trees that are on the left-hand side of the paper road. So we're trying to minimize how many trees would end up having to be impacted by the water main going out to Old Bridge Road. And that was reviewed and discussed on the site with the folks from the water and sewer department. And, some of them are invasive and some of them aren't invasive. And we're trying to keep as many there as we can and adequately get the water main installed as they're requesting and provide the necessary easement there.
In terms of mitigation, I notice, of course, you have street trees on your plan, but I see there are some treeless areas on the south side of the non-vehicular passage for water service, where you could, at least in theory, put in some replacement trees to make up for the ones you'll have to take out on the north side.
I would be open to considering that. Yes. I mean, as we would move, if you potentially move through the process and we had tree mitigation as we look at the individual lots, I am certainly open to considering tree mitigation after the water main would be installed to provide an appropriate buffer for both those particular butters there. I spent quite a bit of time with both those abutters, and there are some trees there that they would like to have come down that they feel are a risk to their house. But as we take some of those down, I think we could identify a plan to provide some other plantings there in that area.
That would be great. Thank you for your consideration.
Can I make a very small comment of a linguistic nature, which is one of your proposed street names is Saddle Lane. And I'll be guided by the fire department in this, but I'm picturing a lot of conversations that go Saddle Lane. What? Saddle Lane, because the first word ends in L and the second word begins in L. So there's lots of other, Saddle Row, who knows what. I don't know if there would be a different name that you think would flow off the tongue better than Lane, but again, if the fire department is okay, I can live with it.
I could also reach back to the members of the fire department that gave us the original feedback on the road names and see if they had a suggestion that might be better over the comms than Saddle Lane.
Their preference is Harness Road or Harness Lane, and their first preference would be Saddle Road. And that'll be in the letter that you get tomorrow.
Okay.
They did just, or even Harness Hill Road was acceptable. They just didn't want it to be Harness Hill.
Okay. Well, we can evaluate those, and I do agree with the point. Maybe Saddle Lane doesn't come over the emergency service communication radios that smoothly, so we can consider a different option.
To the point about the trees, the plan does show the required street trees at the required intervals, which the board has in the past incorporated a condition in decisions that does allow some flexibility for those to be placed after the road and stormwater drainage and utilities is put in. Sometimes on the plan, it might not be the best place, and shifting it in locations is something that the board has allowed in the past.
One other question I had is with this new plan, hopefully final plan, do we have a calculation in terms of soil removal?
Yes, that calculation for the requirements for the road to be installed with its necessary infrastructure is still consistent with what we had previously submitted. There might be a little bit more adjustment that is made just really for that final section of the water main that's going out from the end of the paved road out to Old Bridge. There might be a small calculation change that we need to make for that, but there hasn't been other calculation changes based off of the design modifications we made.
So that was approximately 3,500 cubic yards. Is that correct? Or am I totally off?
That was more for the whole subdivision in total. So
Okay.
Nathaniel, do you have the ability to go to the planning board department
Yeah, let me find it.
and planning
So
board department current documents?
Wait.
Yep.
Fill there. It's approximately 600 cubic yards for the road and infrastructure.
is that what you need?
Oh,
That's what I'm looking. Yep.
So
Yep.
Linda, to your question, if it's regarding whether an earth removal permit is needed, so the earth removal, whether earth removal permit is needed would be only, it would not be for the whole project, because the earth removal needed to build a house or a septic system is exempt. So it is only whether the project is over a certain amount for other features. And so that's why they did this cut and fill analysis.
Bigger.
No.
Okay.
So go ahead, Nathaniel, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say that looks like the correct document. Yeah. And as you said, yeah, we separate out the foundations and septic fields and the drainage and whatnot. But yeah, Matt, you said just below 6,000. That looks like that's what's presented here. Yep.
Yeah, I think for the infrastructure related component of it's about 600 cubic.
Or 600. Yeah, excuse me. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And so at this point, Elizabeth, are all the stormwater issues addressed
Yes.
in your most recent? Okay, great. All right, are there additional questions from the planning board members? If not, then perhaps we can go to comments from the public. If you have a comment, and you can use your raised hand feature on Zoom, then we'd be happy to take those at this time. I see Mr. Max.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Maxim Erchak. I live at 54 Staffordshire Lane. Over multiple discussion, multiple people raise a concern about ecological impact and quality of life for all neighbors will be impacted, and also town doesn't have sewage connector for all 4 buildings. So my question, and we're still talking about building for keeping the same plan, building for large buildings. How neighbors could impact or could influence the project? My question.
Thank you very much. Are there any additional comments from the public? I see Andy McClatchy.
Hi, my name is Andy McClatchy, and I have lived on Old Bridge Road for nearly 30 years. And the proposed development will involve the construction of a house, removal of forest, and creation of a retaining wall, all in very close proximity to the back of my house. So I have a question and a comment. And my question is, I just haven't heard an answer to why the town won't permit the sewage lines when there are discussions of adding 200-unit apartment complexes that all would hook up directly to the sewage. I just don't understand the answer to that question. And then my comment will be related. That's something you can answer. I don't know.
That's a
So,
determination,
Yeah.
sorry, Elizabeth, made
No,
by
I don't, it's
Public
not,
Works.
it's not under the planning board's jurisdiction to make that finding whether to allow a sewer main extension. That is under the Public Works Commission, which Mr. Seppi went to the Public Works Commission in December. I don't know the exact date, Matt, so that, there's probably minutes from that meeting and material that was provided by the Public Works Director on the finding they made to not grant that sewer extension. The project at Baker Ave is a completely different animal because it is a comprehensive permit. The town really does not have the ability to deny that request for a sewer connection. But it, that clearly is within the Public Works Commission jurisdiction to either grant or not grant a sewer main extension.
Can I make a comment then?
Yes, if you'd like to follow up on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's related. My reason for asking is because I'm very concerned about the tree removal. And it seems like that's an unnecessary reason to remove the trees. And my comment is related. It's that, it's pretty clear that climate change is happening, and there are cries across many communities, including neighboring towns, to do everything we can to avoid removing mature trees. And I think the town and Mr. Seppi has a opportunity to do something really good here and adjust their plans to avoid removing some of the trees they've slated for removal, either by pressing that sewer or the paper road issue, although I'm happy to hear you discuss that, or at the very least by adjusting your plans so as to not just maximize the footprint of the house, but rather maximize the environment that surrounds it. This is what I did in rebuilding my house here on Old Bridge Road. I resisted the urging of contractors to make it a big house and instead worked with an architect and a well-known arborist, Matt Fody, to build it in a way that preserved two very large old mature sugar maples on my property. And I've been told that my house is actually worth more because I did that. So that's just the end of my comment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any additional comments? If so, please use the raised hand function. It's easier to find people if they use that, but I will keep looking. Seeing no additional comments then, I think then I think that the time extension for the decision had expired on February 12th, but you've granted a time extension to March 8th. Is that correct, Mr. Seppi?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so I would like to move that that we continue the public hearing and accept that time extension to March 8th to our meeting on March 6th at 7 o'clock. And that would be to review the definitive subdivision plan of EMS development for improvement of a new roadway and for the creation of 4 new building lots at 80X and 1053 Main Streets, parcel number 3730 and 3734. And could I have a second from the board?
Second.
Thank you, Sue. And if we can then take a vote on that. Andrew Boardman.
Elizabeth seems
Sorry,
to have
Elizabeth.
something to
No,
say.
that's okay. So is the direction the board wishes me to draft a decision with, based on the comment letters from town staff and
Yes,
for the
assuming
6th?
that the comment letters are, we haven't seen the last comment letter that just came in today, but assuming as you described, yeah, I think I would add that in
Okay.
to the
All right.
motion. Thank you. Okay, and Sue, would you like to second with the amendment?
Second.
Thank you. So let's see, I was, I believe, asking Andrew,
Yes.
Abby, Flanagan, Sue,
Aye.
Mark,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Okay, thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing you on this in March.
Thank you, and I appreciate everyone's time tonight.
So now we will move on to general public comment. General public comment is limited up to 15 minutes with no more than 3 minutes allocated to any one speaker. General public comment is limited to items that are not on tonight's agenda. So again, if anyone has comment, could you please identify yourself with the raised hand function? Page through here, and seeing none. Then we'll move on to some good news. We have a potential member of the West Concord Advisory Committee, Mr. Gregory Dorothy of 188 Border Road, has been recommended by the West Concord Advisory Committee as an associate member position for a term to expire in April of 2027. And if Mr. Gregory is available, yes, could you unmute yourself? And it would be great if you can spend some time introducing yourself and telling us about your interest in the West Concord Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Sure thing. Thank you very much, Linda. It's very nice to meet you all via Zoom. I am been in Concord for the last 14 years. I actually lived at 1065 Main Street, and I own that condo right next to where Mr. Seppi is building for about 10 years. And then we moved over here to Border Road 2 years ago. So yeah, like 12, 13, 14 years, however long we've been here. My wife grew up in town. She went to CCHS, was on Old Bedford Road first and then moved over here to West Concord. And that's just kind of where we ended up along the way. I have an extensive background in different construction trades, and as being here in town, I really would like to see and be a part of the advancement of the town, seeing that we're able to hopefully in some way leave this a better place for our kids. My wife is second generation here in town, and we hope our boys will do the same in coming back here. I have a 6 and a 4-year-old. My 6-year-old goes to Thoreau, and I have my youngest over at Concord Children's Center right here in West Concord. And we love what we've seen in the development and growth so far of West Concord. And I feel like, being a part of that, and helping see it move further along the way and hopefully leaving it a better place for our kids. I'm currently working for a European Architectural Supply, which is a high-end European window company that's out of Littleton. I'm their VP of operations, and we sell high-end windows. We do a lot of projects here in town. We did the job over in Nut Meadow. We had that. We just finished Calabria over there by the Concord River, and have done multiple homes around the area with our European windows that we bring in from the factories that we work with over there. And it's just I've been there for about 2 years. And then before that, I've run nationwide paint companies as well as other glass companies that have done commercial as well. So I have my hand in both commercial and residential construction over the years. So, but like I said, being part of the WCAC, I hope that at some point that I could leave Concord a little bit better and being part of this. And I just love the town. I love what the town is. I love everybody in the town. I play basketball with a lot of guys around town. I'm part of the dads group, and I know a lot of young adults around town already who have gotten to be friends with our kids. And it's just, I'd like to give back a little more than what what the town's already given us has been amazing. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your willingness to be a volunteer. You can be assured you will have a busy and valued role in that regard, and we look forward to working with you. So if I could ask someone for a nomination for Mr. Dorothy so that we can nominate his candidacy over to the Select Board.
Yes, I move that the planning board recommend Mr. Dorothy to the select board for appointment to the West Concord Advisory Committee.
And I'll second that.
That would be for a term
Associate position, yes.
associate position to expire April 30th, 2027.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, taking a roll call. We'll start with Sue.
Aye.
Abby.
Aye.
Andrew.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
And myself, Linda Miller. Yes. And so thank you. Did I miss anyone? I don't think so. So again, thank you very much. And we'll move that through whatever red tape is required. But thanks for coming tonight.
Excellent. Thank you
You're,
very much.
Of course, welcome to stay on as long as you like.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so the next item is related to the MBTA community zoning site plan rules and regulations. And so we are going to have a discussion with our consultant, and I think I'll let Elizabeth take that on from here. Thank you.
Great, I don't need to say much. I'm gonna pass this over to Emily Ennis with Ennis Associates, and she's gonna run through the draft working document that they've developed so far, and then discuss the timeline moving forward, and also get feedback on the board on how they want to handle the public workshop on March 27th. Okay, 27th. You're
Right.
muted, Emily, sorry.
I would just mention that the board hasn't seen this document yet. But I would assume that after tonight, it will be posted on the website.
Yes, and then this will be continued for the board to review this, discuss it, provide comments back to Emily, and then we'll have the public workshop, get more comments, and then she will come back with a revised draft, and then if town meeting passes the MBTA community zoning, then the board would move forward to finalize the rules and regs, and then would have to have a public hearing to adopt them. All right.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Emily Ennis from Ennis Associates, and I'm joined by my colleague Madge Pate. And we have been working on a draft document to be delivered to you tonight. So Elizabeth has a copy, I hope in her inbox, assuming email worked. That is a memorandum that explains the sources that we looked at and a complete draft of the site plan review rules and regulations, and I'll show it to you in a minute. And by complete, I just mean that all of the sections are there. Obviously, we are looking forward to your comments, but we wanted to get all of the components together so that you could see the interrelationship of the documents. As Elizabeth said, we're giving it to you tonight. I'll show the structure of it, hoping for your comments by the 20th, at least for the first round, and there will be a couple of iterations on this. We are continuing to look into some of the case law and also what other communities are doing relative to the MBTA Communities Act. I think one of the things that's different about this site plan review and regulations is right now it is narrowed to the scope of reviewing multifamily. We understand at some point you may then expand it out to other uses, but what that means is some of the things that we might have included when looking at all of the uses in town, we might hold back on because of the requirement for the multifamily to be as of right and to not have undue requirements for multifamily that aren't also required of other uses. So that makes parsing it a little bit interesting at this point. We want to make sure that we comply with the MBTA Communities Act, but also set you up that should you wish to expand it at a future date, the format is already there. So with that, I'd be happy to share my screen and just walk you through what the structure looks like and what we're hoping that you can think about and review. Just going to pull it up. Okay, so it starts off with a memorandum. These just have some of the sources that hopefully you can all see this my screen. But these have some of the sources that we used just so you can track that yourself. And then we start off, of course, with the cover. I have to say that one of our primary sources was Elizabeth had already started a few years back on a draft, and we thought, why waste good work? So Elizabeth, you were top of the sources, but we did look at some of the communities that she had recommended that we look at nearby, but also some other sources, and some documentation on the legalities of site plan review and the practices and procedures there. Table of contents, we start with section 1, general provisions. So that's purposes and goals, and I'll have some more about that. Then we have pre-application procedures, site plan review procedures. I understand this might be a little bit small, so let me just zoom in a little bit for you here. site plan review procedures, which is section 3, section 4, administration, and then section 5, design standards. There are two kind of tricky pieces in thinking about this. One is the purpose and the other is the design standards. This is where a lot of the great language about thinking about climate resiliency, thinking about sustainability, thinking about energy efficiency. I've left a lot of that in for now. I do have a question again, because this is being applied to multifamily only in perhaps the short term. If that sets up something that EOHLC feels might be unreasonable in the short term. So we're continuing to explore that, but I didn't want to lose those great ideas. And then at the back, we have the appendices that in terms of the application checklist and fee schedule, just so again, we're presenting you with what a complete package looks like. Now you'll see some lovely errors bookmarked not defined. And as you go through this, Word has a wonderful habit of seeing the formatting that you're trying to put in there and making its own suggestions, sometimes without letting you know that it's changed it. So there are some formatting issues in here. There will be more as we respond to comments and you give us comments. We will have that obviously cleaned up for the final document, but just note that all the indents aren't going to line up for a little while. We have presented this to, I'm showing you a PDF, but we have also given you a Word version so that you can do track changes, make it a little bit easier for us to look at comments. So the purpose and goals, these are the two areas that I want to call out in terms of, there's some great language, some of it from Elizabeth, some of it from others about here in the purpose and goals about the idea of sustainability, of walkability, minimum project requirements for impervious surfaces, reclaimed and recycled materials. I've left this in red because this is some of the language that I wouldn't question if it were being applied to everything, but I might question here. Other parts of the section: establish the authority, add any definitions that are unique to this area or to these site plan regulations, define the applicability and waiver procedures, define how you amend it and the effective date. So fairly boilerplate language. In those cases, we looked at communities that had very similar language and used that. The pre-application procedures, we have put in, and this is language from Elizabeth initially, the idea of a town staff review meeting. And I had a great conversation with members of town staff about their different roles in the process. So we've kept that in mind as we're working through this. Right now it's set up as a strongly advised pre-application, not a required pre-application. There's also a recommended or the option to have a preliminary meeting with yourselves prior to submitting an application. The language is clear that the information received, whether from town staff or with the board, does not constitute an automatic approval process. This is merely for their own information so that they can submit a complete application. The site plan review procedures go through the requirements for the application. There's quite a lot of requirements. We tried to be complete here without being onerous, so I'll be interested in your feedback on that. And it's all of the different types of plans and narratives that need to be submitted. A couple of things in here that I want to just talk with a couple of other communities about in terms of the MBTA Communities Act. The section also talks about how the plan should be filed, what the role is of the different departments in submitting comments. Because this is site plan review, MBTA, the multifamily is, as you know, meant to be as of right. With site plan review, you're having a meeting, not a public hearing, but there are still dates associated with that, and a description of how the site plan approval, the conditions under which site plan approval can be granted. There is clear language that says that you are regulating the use, not it's not a special permit where you are potentially denying the use. We go into administration immediately afterwards. Some of the communities we looked at, they put their development standards or their design standards immediately afterwards. That kind of breaks up the flow of the process into administration. So we just changed that around. And again, a lot of this is boilerplate, but it does refer back to your own bylaws. And then finally, the design standards, just again, to let you know what the sections are. These came from a couple of different sources. Elizabeth's original draft had quite a few in here. We pulled from various different communities that seem to have reasonable standards for your use in this context. And we also pulled from the sample zoning from EOHLC, particularly with respect to buildings, but there are also some site regulations. So this is probably the section that I think you'll have the most comments on. So we're looking forward to what your thoughts are. But again, we're trying to focus this on the requirements of site plan review. So it talks about the standards for the site itself, the design of the site itself, landscaping, access, circulation, stormwater management, but also the position and massing of the buildings in relationship to each other, i.e. their neighbors, or if it's more than one on a site, or in terms of the relationship with the rest of the site itself. So that is a basic overview. Happy to answer any initial questions, but I know this is a lot to just skim through with you all at once. So I just wanted to give you an introduction so you knew what to look for.
Elizabeth, would you like to make some preliminary comments here or give us some
Sure.
feedback?
So I will also, be going through this from just the application procedure standpoint on, how we take in applications and go through that. I will be also sending this out to the town staff that I work with when applications come in to get some of their feedback. That definitely will not happen by the 20th of February. So I think what we had talked about was on the 20th, having just the board have a general conversation about the draft rules and regs, start to collect your feedback in the documents, whether you can send them to me. I just want to tell Sue she doesn't have to correct spelling or punctuation at this point, or formatting or anything like that. We'll definitely make sure that happens for the last draft. Yeah. And so that's all I have to add.
Are there comments and questions from the planning board members here?
So can I just ask for a timeline on this? So you're gonna send this
Yeah.
out, tremendous amount of information there that will take a long time to sort of work through and understand. We'd have a preliminary discussion at our next meeting on the 20th of February. And then probably discuss it again on the 6th. And then again on whatever the next meeting is. Then we have a public hearing on the 27th. Is that correct? And then
A
we
public meeting on the 27th.
meeting. Okay,
yeah,
not a
so-
hearing. Yeah, thanks. I heard you decide. Yeah, I wrote that down. Okay. And then we wait to see whether the town meeting approves the article that we put out there. And then if that gets approved, then we really dig into the sort of coming up with a consensus on it. Is that correct? Is that the timeline? That's a question.
Yeah. So the timeline we have is, Emily did her initial presentation tonight. So, you're just seeing it, and then on the 20th, the board will 2 weeks, you can go through it, develop your questions, comments,
Right.
come back on the 20th. I'll be at the meeting on the 20th, have just a conversation about them, and then begin to, take in those comments and make, start sending questions or revisions to Emily. On March 6th, Emily will be back to go over what she's going to present at the public workshop on the 27th. The workshop happens on March 27th. And then Emily will take all of the board's feedback, town staff feedback from the public workshop, and then wait to see what happens at town meeting. And she'll come back on May 21st to present that revised document, and then have a public, we need to post a public hearing, do a legal notice in the paper. So you would not be able to have a public hearing, and earliest you could have that would be June 4th.
It's a public meeting, not a hearing, isn't it?
It is a public hearing to adopt them. You are required to have a public hearing to adopt them.
Thanks. Thank you.
Other questions from board members? Emily, I have, and I'm not seeing everybody, but I don't see a question. I have a question about sort of the general structure, and that is I can see that we could have very different applications. One from something like what we've been seeing in the 40Bs, 200 units going in here, there, in some areas that are part of the zoning, and others just someone wanting to turn their nice colonial into 3 flats. And I'm uncomfortable giving, one size fits all when the sizes could be very different. So what, are there things that I didn't see that would facilitate that, or what? And I'm thinking both of the burden placed on smaller property owners who might want to make that change. And I think we really would like to see that sort of organic change possible in town. I also see that if we had a good deal of that, that all of this documentation coming to town staff and then coming to the planning board could be somewhat distracting, perhaps to have to look at a lot of 3 flats unless there's something special about them. So how are you thinking about that, and how can this accommodate that? Have other towns bifurcated their application processes here, and does it make a difference, or can you really cut down on all of the necessary elements? That was long-winded. I apologize.
It was the perfect question, actually, because Madge and I were talking about it earlier today as we were going over the final initial draft we wanted to send you. And so the answer is yes, you can. There's a couple of different ways you could think about it. And as I was looking at the requirements, the question that we were talking about with each other was, do you do a major plan review, minor plan review? Is that minor plan review an administrative review? Because we've seen that in a couple of different communities, that if you're under a certain threshold, the review is done at the staff level. It could also be if you're under a certain threshold, you don't need to do that review at all. So your point of a house that's existing, the site is already there, there's already a driveway, maybe that is a much lower level of review. Maybe you're just double checking to make sure there's sufficient parking, or just checking off a few things. So this could be set up to do that. It's not now. I would, and so I'm glad you asked the question, because I forgot to mention it. I would be very interested in your thoughts, the planning board's thoughts on how you think of a threshold, because some of these requirements are going to be onerous for those smaller developments. And if you are looking for that type of organic growth, I would strongly recommend that we talk about the thresholds for where you would require that higher level versus where you would allow for a lower level of review, or a lower requirement for information. I think that's very important.
And also in line with that, can there be, under the site review, a request for relief in any way? So example, with that same nice colonial that you're turning into 3 flats, that might take you from required 2 parking spaces to 6. And that, again, I think in terms of organic change, we couldn't say, you know, you only need 1, you know, in this instance, you just made 1 parking space per each unit would be adequate if it's in the town center. And you know, why add more parking and with you know, impermeable material on it when we don't have to do that? So again, is there something in here that allows for relief of some of our conditions that are you know, how do we deal with that? Is it in here?
Yes, there is a waiver
Okay.
provision in there. We can check
Okay.
and make sure it has the wording that you're looking for. I do think having that type of flexibility is very important, because we have, I mean, you just brought up a couple of conditions. Every building is different, every site is different. So allowing the ability for the planning board to waive that strict requirement, as long as the application, the language is that the waiver is in the public interest and it's not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of these rules and regulations. So that goes back up to that first section. That becomes very important, because the waiver points to that purpose as, you know, as long as you're meeting the spirit. So your example of impervious surface, right now there's text in there about we're trying to reduce the impervious surface. So you would be able to grant that waiver saying, okay, it's in the best interest because it's in the purpose. So you should, as a board, pay a lot of attention to what that purpose says.
So although I do need to take a step back and also say that I'm not sure how, and this will be a question for town council, which as we're talking and my mind is thinking, taking, you know, this initial draft and along with, you know, that even that particular question, I'm not sure how that these site plan rules and regs intertwine with the actual requirements of the zoning bylaw. And because the zoning bylaw is very specific about relief from parking, and that's a special permit, and that's through the zoning board of appeals. So there may be there may be recommendations from town council on, you know, whether the actual MBTA communities multifamily zoning article needs some tweaking. The board would have to, you know, as part of their motion to be able to facilitate something like that. So that's you know, a question, Linda, you know, that we'll pose to town council. And you know, now that they now have something, you know, here's a rough working draft, but here was the question that was asked. I'm not sure regulations can grant that power to the planning board. I think that still needs a special permit from the Board of Appeals to be able to waive other provisions of the zoning bylaw.
That's about, by the way, that is, well, two points on that are excellent. Is one, yes, you should absolutely have town council review that, review the regulations. I always recommend that. And the other part is, yes, there's a difference between waiving the requirements of the bylaw versus waiving some of the required standards in the rules and regulations themselves. So Elizabeth, I'm glad you pointed that out, and we'll have to make sure that the language points to the correct portion. I may have been misspoke when I took your impervious surface example.
Sorry.
No
Well,
worries.
I think, you know, impervious surface is something. So I don't think the planning board has the ability to waive other elements of the zoning bylaw where it's clearly under the jurisdiction of the Board of Appeals.
Right.
But you could say, you know, those spaces don't have to be, extra spaces don't have to be paved. They could be, you know, pervious pavers, grass pavers, or, so that's more of a design standard that would be established in the rules and regulations, which I do believe the planning board will have the ability to, you know, and not waive, but, you know, modify. But I don't think you have the ability to waive actual elements of the zoning bylaw when they're under the jurisdiction of the Board of Appeals.
I would agree with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. Okay. Anything else from the planning board? Then perhaps we can take some questions or comments from the public. I see Carol Savoy has her hand up.
Yes, hi, Carol Savoy, 61 Belknap Street. I was just wanted to dig into the parking waiver and the zoning bylaw, and I guess my concern was, you know, there's a parking table in the zoning bylaw that, you know, we've been discussing as regards the MBTA, and I know that you made some changes in the MBTA warrant in regard to parking, and I'm just trying to understand what is the document that of record, you know, can you supersede what's in the zoning bylaw by, you know, putting what is in best interest to you in the purpose section of these rules and regs and then overrule it all? It just seems crazy to me.
No, I think that Elizabeth just clarified that. I just used a bad example. So, in terms of picking out parking, where, as you point out very astutely, we have a parking table and that would supersede, the rules and regs. So, yeah.
Right.
Good question. Good question, Carol, as always.
Well, thank you, Linda.
Thanks.
I guess I'm just concerned that, you know, if you put something in the purpose section of the rules and regs, you know, as we were counseled to be very careful about what you put in the purpose section, because therefore you can refer to it later and, you know, undo things that are already done in other parts of, you know, be it the zoning bylaw or other things that we've already voted on. So I want to be really clear about what we can and can't do in these rules and regs, I guess
Thank
is
you.
my point.
So,
All right.
just to reiterate, the rules and regs do not supersede or override any section of the zoning bylaw outside of, you know, the actual warrant article for the MBTA communities. These rules and regs only apply to that section. Any other section in the zoning bylaw and the requirements of those sections, those stand and those take precedent. So under, you know, section 7.7, the parking requirements, you can only get relief from the parking table by special permit through the zoning board of appeals.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
Emily.
I thought it might also be helpful if I read the draft language. So it says a waiver of strict compliance with these rules and regulations, not the zoning. The waiver does not refer to the zoning, only to the actual rules and regulations. So I would support Elizabeth in that you cannot waive any portion of the zoning with this with the rules and regulations.
Thank you both.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any additional comments? So I would say this is going to be posted on the website, and we very much would appreciate comments from anyone. And you know Elizabeth's email. So please, everyone who's interested, go through this with us, and we'll try and feed these back to Emily as well, so that we get some public community outreach meeting thoughts if you so want to help us with this.
So I think the only other thing was providing Emily some guidance, the board providing her guidance on the type of format you think the workshop, public workshop should be. With the MBTA communities and the transportation plan, and there's a lot of things going on. We've tried a lot of different things, in person, hybrid, transportation had like an open house type of format with stations and questions. And so, Emily, I don't know if you have any thoughts you wanted to provide.
It's always a little tricky when we start dealing with something that is mostly text, right? Because there aren't the pretty pictures that we need to really draw people in. Certainly, we've been doing, in terms of community workshops or meetings, we've been doing a number of different formats. One that has worked recently is a hybrid where we're asking the same questions in the room as we are online. We've had particular luck recently with having a short presentation and then an open mic where people can just ask their questions and make sure that, we hear from them what their concerns are. So I think we can be very flexible at our end. I think this lends itself a little bit less to an open house because that tends to people going around, and I don't think they want boards of information where they're just reading the text and commenting. So I would say perhaps a short presentation on what site plan rules and regs are, what the components of this draft are, some of the maybe the issues that we've been talking about, and the choices we've made by the time we get to the March 27th meeting, and then perhaps an open mic might work out really well if the board thinks that that type of feedback would be valuable to them.
That sounds good. I think we should also maybe start out with what rules and regs can accomplish and what they can't, and what's different between site plan review and special permits.
I think that's a great idea. Sort of an education, a rules and regs 101 for people. And then the particular issues we're looking for feedback. I mean, they'd be welcome to comment on any part of it, but if there are particular issues at that point or topics, we really want feedback, focusing on those, and then just giving people a chance. I think it will be important for people to understand that that open mic is really limited to the site plan rules and regs because you've had other processes where that you've gotten on the MBTA Communities Act where you've gotten feedback. So we'll want to focus the comments and questions on that, but I think that's doable.
And I guess also with the fact that these regulations cannot be more onerous than the underlying regulations in our zoning, that it might be useful to do some kind of, this is what the current zoning is, and this is what we're proposing under site plan, so that people can make that comparison and understand if we are or if we're not, changing things. I think that might be a good illustration and as well.
But I think the only question becomes, do you want this to be an in-person and online or both? It could go either way. The text is sometimes easier to present online, but if we're doing it as a slide deck with it's more about the issues, then that becomes less of a problem to think about. So you don't have to answer tonight, but just with enough time for us to start planning for what that meeting would be, it'd be interesting to know the format that you'd like it in.
Yeah, I certainly think we probably want to have a virtual component just to make things again, as Elizabeth mentioned, there's so many demands on people's time this time of year, and it's only going to be more over the next few weeks that we'll be thinking about this. So I think we need definitely a virtual component so that we make this easy for people to attend, and then also that we have the ability to record so that people who miss it can easily, is there any way we would want to do any polling, to get input from people? That's what I wonder, if there are like questions that people could weigh in on in terms of and that I would ask people to look through as reviewing this, is where could we, get specific feedback on what specific items from the community. For example, maybe what would be a cutoff from this? I don't want to go into examples. I messed that up before, so we'll just leave it there.
We could certainly do polling. I think, Elizabeth, the town has that function. You and I can talk about that, but that would be possible. Might be a nice mix of polling and the open mic, get a sense from people what they're thinking individually, and then that gives, additional information for people to comment on when they're asking their questions. Or I think, there's a couple of things in there, knowing what's in the draft and the conversation we've had today, that I think we could probably structure some good questions for polling, if that's of interest.
I think the question, Linda, would be, whether people are supportive of a minor site plan amendment and major site plan amendment, but
Things like
don't
that.
have to figure out the actual process at this point.
Okay. Great. So thank you. Elizabeth, any wrap-ups, or Emily,
No,
anything you'd like to, ideas you want to leave with us, or you've covered it all? Great. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then I'm just looking to see if we have, I don't know, I see someone on the phone, but we were going to move next to the, introduce, Laura Davis. Is she here?
No, I don't know if I have her phone number. Hang on. I don't know if I have her phone number.
I don't know if I do either. Hold on one second.
Oh. Sue has her number.
Oh, great.
I think Sue maybe, but I'm looking in our. Oh. Okay,
So other than that,
give me 2 seconds.
okay.
Linda, can I make a comment while we wait?
Oh, please do.
So, the public meeting on the 27th. I think it'll be important that we confine it to the rules and regulations for the MBTA project, and that be really clear, because otherwise I think it'll get chaotic, okay?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because I think it'll be confusing to people that, oh, we're talking about rules and regulations for zoning, and that's not what we're talking about. I'm sure that Emily will make that clear when she makes a presentation, but otherwise I can see it getting out of hand. Okay, that's all. So just a
Mhm.
comment.
And I'm
Okay.
sure
I-
she'll make it clear,
I-
but it could get out of hand the other way too, which is that
Called,
people
left a
think
message
it's
and no one texting her.
everything about MBTA communities and not just site plan rules and regs, rather a discussion of the warrant article.
Right. Um,
Oh,
so that will
Laura
be
says
af-
Laura says she got the dates mixed up.
Okay, does that mean she's not available, or does that mean? Oh,
She did not actually say that.
Okay.
I don't
All right.
know.
Okay, well, there we are. So, but that will be the 27th after the public hearing, so maybe that will make it less likely that people will mix things up in terms of site plan rules and regs versus the warrant articles.
So I just want to say, I think it would be,
Unfortunately, you don't have any other business on your agenda.
I think
I
it
don't
would be
know if
really
you
I'm
helpful.
sorry,
a minute?
Oh, sorry.
Abby's
wait.
commenting, Elizabeth?
Oh,
Just in
You're on.
terms of,
I'm
Sorry.
talking and I can't hear you.
just in terms of the public hearing versus the public meeting, I think it would be really helpful to have like a little explainer that's like, there are two meetings. They have two different purposes. You know, we have a March 13th, we have a March 27th, so that people can understand, because people may, as Mark said, you know, they may want to attend the March 13th because they really want to talk about the warrant article, or vice versa. And I think having a little explainer, because the difference between a public hearing and a public meeting is going to be lost on I think the average person who's not in the weeds on this. So I think it'd be helpful to just be like, you know, attend this meeting if you want to discuss X, attend this meeting if you want to discuss Y.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Yep,
make it clear for people, I think.
that's a good comment as well. Okay,
So,
all right, so
I first, wait,
Elizabeth.
I first want, your public hearing for annual town meeting is Tuesday, March 12th.
Yes,
The website says the 13th.
The snow date is the 13th.
Okay, because I'm looking at the town website right now,
Okay,
and it says March 13th, 2024. I was equally confused. So it's like town meeting schedule for 2024, public hearings, February 26th, select board, March 7th, FinCom, March 13th, planning board, March 19th, FinCom 2, March 21st, FinCom 3.
okay, no, we got that changed.
I was gonna
So-
ask a question, but I felt like,
No.
I was like, I'm pretty sure I had a different date, but okay.
No, so, okay, yeah, no, it is definitely March 12th. So, we will get that changed
Excellent.
first thing tomorrow morning. March 3rd, it originally was the March 13th, which is a Wednesday. Your snow date was like the following week. And so things got changed, and that was like a month or so ago, the select board agreed. So. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
okay, so,
Laura did get back to me, her apologies, she got her dates mixed up.
okay,
And she is in the middle of something right now and wouldn't be able to join for like half an hour, so I told
Okay.
her, no worries, we'll find another date.
okay, any
That works.
updates from you, Elizabeth, or any comments from planning board members in terms of liaison? I don't know, Mark, if you'd like to give us an update of anything that's going on. You're muted. Mark, you're muted.
Is that better?
Yes,
Terrible picture. Hanscom Field Advisory, we expect to have the report on the Northfield project on the 20th. We're hopeful of having a copy of it prior to that so we can peruse through it. The contractor is making a presentation to us on the 20th about what they expect to do. We should know more about what's going to happen there after we see that report, okay, which is the environmental impact report on that project. So I'll keep you posted.
Great, thank you. Anyone else with any comments? If not, then I will leave you all to a good evening and look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Yeah, on the 20th.
That's correct.
Good night.
All right.
Night.